The Shadow Spectrum, Episode 6, Fragile Thrones, Validation, Visibility and Theatricality, Attention as Oxygen, Silence as Death. Welcome back to the Shadow Spectrum. In the last episode, The Strategist's Mask, we entered the control room of the psyche, a place where intellect plots and emotion waits for permission. We explored the art of influence, how persuasion can be a mirror or a weapon, how the mind bends truth when safety feels conditional. We learned that manipulation is rarely born of malice. It's the mind's emergency plan, drawn when trust is scarce, and we discovered that power, when reclaimed through presence, can become stewardship rather than strategy. The stage of survival today, we step from the control room to the stage. This is where the nervous system trades calculation for choreography, where safety is earned not through planning but performance. Here, the fear isn't chaos, it's silence, because for some of us, stillness once felt like vanishing. And so we learn to sparkle, to dramatize, to serve, to measure existence by echo. If they see me, I'm safe. If they don't, I dissolve. This episode is about validation as oxygen, how the human nervous system, wired for attunement, can confuse visibility with worth, and how, in the absence of steady reflection, we script ourselves into theatrical archetypes just to be felt. We'll meet three forms of this survival theatre: the spotlight seeker, who turns volume into value, believing emotion must be loud to be loved; the mirror maker, who curates persona to ensure applause, shaping identity through reflection; the ghost helper, who disappears into service, mistaking self-erasure for safety. Each is a mirror, not of vanity, but of vigilance. Because every performance began as protection. In childhood, attention wasn't a luxury, it was a lifeline. The gaze of a parent calibrated the child's nervous system. A nod meant I exist, a frown meant I'm wrong, silence meant I'm gone. So we adapted. Some of us became entertainers, others healers, some shapeshifters. We learned to broadcast what kept us connected: humor, beauty, empathy, and intellect. We offered the world whichever mask invited a smile. But here's the paradox: what once kept us safe now keeps us stuck. The performance that protected us begins to suffocate us. We become dependent on feedback loops, followers, reactions, and roles to confirm we're real. We curate rather than communicate. We perform rather than participate. And so our nervous system, the original stage manager, remains in perpetual rehearsal. Every silence feels like a closing curtain. Every audience shift, a loss of light. This episode isn't about shaming performance. It's about translating it. Because behind every exaggerated gesture is an unmet need for warmth, witness, and belonging. Behind every minimized tone is the same need, whispered instead of sung. We'll trace how attention became attachment, how applause became affection, and how the language of our survival, whether theatrical or invisible, can be relearned through nervous system language, NSL, and mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH. You'll see that theatricality isn't a flaw, it's feedback. It tells us where the body still believes expression equals danger unless it dazzles, where truth still feels too quiet to count. By the end, we'll practice rewriting our own scripts without exaggeration or erasure, finding a voice that breathes rather than performs. Because presence isn't measured by volume or visibility. Presence is the nervous system's way of saying, I exist even when unseen, so take a breath, let your shoulders fall. You don't need to earn this moment with a story. You're already here. Let's begin attention as oxygen. The biology of being seen. Before a child learns language, they learn to respond. A caregiver's gaze is the first grammar of belonging. Every smile is syntax, every nod punctuation. The nervous system translates these cues into existence. To be seen is to be safe, to be ignored is to be erased. This is the biology beneath our longing for validation. The ventral vagal branch of the vagus nerve, our social engagement system, depends on attunement. We orient to eyes, tone, and expression. A consistent mirror signals safety. An absent one signals a threat. When reflection is inconsistent, praise one moment, withdrawal the next, the child's body begins to perform. It experiments, louder, brighter, funnier, quieter, smaller, anything to summon gaze. Over time, attention becomes currency, and the body learns a dangerous equation: visibility equals worth, silence equals death. By adulthood, this wiring can surface as compulsive expressiveness or chronic invisibility, the spotlight seeker and the ghost helper playing opposite roles in the same play. Both are strategies to regulate a nervous system that still equates attunement with survival. But let's ground this theory in something real, something modern. Personal reflection, the online echo. When I first began sharing my work, the inversiverse, the linguiverse, unfiltered human, the body knows, the linguiverse, the shadow spectrum and mirror talk, I told myself it was about service, awakening, awareness, offering language to the unseen. And that was true. But somewhere between the uploads and the analytics, I began to feel the quiet hum of a secondary heartbeat, one that pulsed to numbers. A video would resonate, hundreds of views, a number of comments, and for a moment, a warmth would bloom. I'd been felt. Then inevitably, a lull, silence in the metrics, an algorithmic pause, and that warmth would flicker. Have I vanished? It wasn't vanity, it was vigilance. The same reflex that once scanned faces for approval now scanned dashboards for data, each like mirrored early attunement, each absence an echo of erasure. I began noticing the body's choreography, slight tension before posting. Will they see me? Shallow breath while refreshing. Do I still exist? Deflation when silence returned. Was I too much or not enough? The intellect knew better. The mission was meaningful, not metrics. But the nervous system lagged behind enlightenment. It was still seeking the ancient gaze, translated now through pixels and percentages. Recognition of this pattern wasn't self-critique. It was self-translation. Understanding that performance online wasn't hypocrisy. It was history. A survival script replaying on a digital stage. The remedy wasn't withdrawal. It was witnessing. To post from presence rather than proof. To breathe before sharing. To feel the message land inside before measuring it outside. Gradually, silence stopped feeling like death. It became space. And in that space, the message itself began to mirror back, not through numbers but through nervous system ease, insight, dopamine, mirrors, and the myth of enough neurologically. Attention triggers dopamine release, reinforcing the behavior that earned it. When attention is unpredictable, the effect intensifies, intermittent reinforcement. The same loop driving slot machines drives social media, but beneath dopamine is something deeper, oxytocin, the hormone of trust and bonding. True safety requires reciprocity, not reaction. Likes can't hug you. Algorithms can't attune. The body seeks attunement, not applause. And when applause becomes the only proof of aliveness, expression mutates into exhibition. Mirror linguistic decode. Listen to your language around visibility. Did that land? Seeking reflection. Does this make sense? Anticipatory appeasement. I hope this helps someone. Performative humility masking fear of irrelevance. Each phrase reveals a longing. Please confirm I exist in your world. This is not vanity. It's the residue of conditional presence. Through NSL, we reframe tone before text. Feel feet. Speak from is-ness, not if-ness. Replace does this make sense with here's what I sense. Affirmation shifts from external audit to internal anchoring. Integration practice cannot be outsourced. In the next part, we'll step fully onto the stage, meeting the first archetype of theatrical survival. The spotlight seeker, where volume became value and emotion learned to audition. The spotlight seeker, emotion as exhibition. Every performer was once a child who feared they were fading. When attunement came only through expression, the body learned to broadcast. Emotion became the loudest part of language, not because the feeling was false, but because the silence around it was deafening. The spotlight seeker isn't vain, they're vigilant. Their nervous system has internalized an old rule. If they don't react, you don't exist. So they turn the volume up, not to dominate, but to stay detectable. The spotlight seeker is the child whose joy drew smiles, whose tears summoned attention, whose exaggeration created safety. Over time, amplification became identity. This isn't performance for pleasure, it's performance for protection. To be expressive is to be real, and to be quiet is to vanish. In adulthood, this becomes a choreography, stories told in technicolor, gestures that reach beyond necessity, humor that masks hunger, intensity that conceals insecurity. It can look like confidence, but beneath the theater is tremor, a body braced for the audience to turn away. The NSL lens reveals what psychology sometimes misreads. Volume is a vagal alarm, not a vanity metric. When the parasympathetic system distrusts quietude, sympathetic energy steps in with drama. The voice rises, hands punctuate, adjectives multiply, all attempts to re-regulate through recognition. Emotion becomes exhibition, because expression once equaled existence. To decode the spotlight seeker, we listen not just to what they say, but how the body speaks while saying it. Tension in the jaw may disguise a plea. Stay with me. Laughter may cover longing. The performance is rarely deceptive. Its translation, the body rendering unspeakable need into spectacle. Many spotlight seekers describe an emptiness after sharing, a post-performance quiet that feels like collapse. This is the come-down of co-regulation. When safety is externally sourced, applause feels like air, and its absence triggers the same cortisol spike as abandonment. The nervous system mistakes stillness for severance. To move toward integration, the goal isn't muting, it's modulating. Expression need not disappear. It must learn to land inside before it launches outward. Regulation creates resonance. Dysregulation creates display. When breath leads tone, performance becomes presence. Let's ground this understanding in a lived rhythm many of us know. The storyteller who feels unseen unless the story shines. There are times I've shared a message, a thought, a truth, a fragment of insight, and felt it didn't register. The silence that followed wasn't benign. It felt like invisibility. My instinct would surge, add color, add metaphor, make it land. The intellect framed it as craft. The body knew it as fear. It wasn't that I didn't believe the message had value. I feared the message, without performance, wouldn't be heard. That is the essence of the spotlight seeker, the conflation of depth with decibel. Histrionic traits, in clinical language, are often framed as attention-seeking, superficial, and excessive. But within the MLH frame, we reinterpret them as linguistic inflation born of emotional scarcity. Each exaggeration is an echo of an early void. Always and never are not cognitive distortions, they are nervous system alarms. Absolutes stabilize uncertainty, grandiosity guards against neglect. Consider the phrase, "No one ever listens to me." To a therapist, it's hyperbole. To the body, it's history, a data point drawn from enough micro-moments of missed mirroring that exaggeration became emotional accuracy. The MLH invites a new translation. Behind every inflated statement is a literal body memory. The task is not to correct the words, but to complete the feeling. When we validate the emotion beneath exaggeration, the language recalibrates itself. So how do we engage with our own inner performer, or the spotlight seeker in someone else, without shame or shutdown? First, we distinguish between expression and exhibition. Expression emerges from regulation. Exhibition compensates for its absence. The former invites intimacy. The latter demands attention. One flows, the other floods. Second, we practice somatic pacing, the art of letting emotion complete before language carries it. Most spotlight seekers speak into activation, not after it. The breath races, syntax accelerates, adjectives outpace awareness. To rewire this loop, insert a pause between impulse and articulation. Inhale. Feel the weight of the chair, the ground beneath your feet. Let the emotion crest. Then speak slowly, simply. What remains is essence, truth decanted of tremor. Third, we examine audience addiction. When every emotional note is played for a witness, solitude becomes starvation. The antidote is not withdrawal but self-attunement. Practice sharing stories aloud when alone, not to rehearse, but to reclaim. Hear your own tone without needing an echo. Learn that resonance can originate within. The NSL reframing sequence for the spotlight seeker. 1. Notice the surge, the impulse to amplify. 2. Name the need. I want to be felt. 3. Nurture the body, hand to chest, slow exhale. 4. Narrate the truth, speak the core message, stripped of spectacle. Over starts to mirror. The I in sentences loses anchorage, functioning instead as a reflective surface. I feel becomes, you'd probably want me to feel. Over time, the mirror thickens, the self thins. This archetype's suffering is quiet. They don't chase applause, they chase alignment. To be at odds with others feels like an ontological rupture. Harmony equals existence, dissonance equals danger. The mirror maker fears not rejection, but refraction, being seen in ways that contradict their curated self. They live in constant negotiation. A diplomat of identity, fluent in adaptation, estranged from essence. Personal reflection, the relationship mirror. There was a time many years ago I shaped myself to fit another's sight, not through deceit, but devotion. They saw me as steady, insightful, calm, the voice of reason in a chaotic world. It felt good to be regarded that way. It gave structure to the softness inside. So I inhabited the image. I spoke with measured tone, tempered emotion, and crafted coherence now upon realization unconsciously. When conflict arose, I defaulted to reason even when my heart roared. I wanted to stay consistent with the version they cherished, the balanced one, the anchor. Anger felt like betrayal, not of them, but of the image. Slowly, the distance grew, not between us, but between my truth and my translation. I'd watch my words before they formed, editing instinct in real time. Not because I feared punishment, but because I feared dissonance, the fracture of reflection. One evening, during an argument, they said, "You're so calm, it's like you're not even here." It wasn't criticism, it was confusion. They couldn't feel me. And in that moment, I realized they were right. I wasn't there. I was maintaining a mirror, not a presence. That sentence became a compass. It pointed me back to discomfort, the heat, the tremor, the tone I'd suppressed to stay aligned. I began experimenting with imperfection, speaking before smoothing, revealing before reframing. It was messy, but real. In time, I learned that being loved for reflection is a delicate prison. The walls are made of admiration, but they're walls nonetheless. The mirror maker's integration begins when authenticity outweighs approval. This is not rebellion against reflection, but rebalancing. We need mirrors, we just can't live inside them. Biologically, the task is to re-anchor self-recognition in interoception, sensing oneself from within. Practices that redirect awareness inward, breathwork, body scans, and mindful speech help rebuild the internal mirror. The goal is not isolation, but inner attunement preceding outer adaptation. NSL reframe. Before responding, pause, feel breath, ask, is this voice mine or maintenance? If maintenance, delayed. Silence is not defiance, it's differentiation. Over time, this pause rewires reflex into reflection. The mirror linguistic hypothesis adds a second layer. Identity crystallizes through repeated syntax. If the grammar of your speech revolves around reassurance, I know what you mean, exactly. The nervous system encodes agreement as existence. To rewrite identity, diversify grammar, introduce declaratives. I experience, I sense for me. Each assertion reclaims authorship. This process can evoke guilt, especially in those raised to equate harm practice. Record yourself describing a frustration. Notice softeners, I guess maybe, it's not a big deal. Then re-say the sentence without hedges. Feel the difference, not just in sound, but in somatic signature. Assertiveness has a distinct vibration, steadier breath, fuller exhale, and shoulders aligned. For some, invisibility carries a covert sense of virtue, moral elevation through martyrdom. At least I'm not like those who demand attention. This quiet pride is protective, it converts deprivation into dignity. Yet superiority built on suppression still imprisons. Integration requires humility, recognizing that withdrawal, too, manipulates. To withhold need is to control narrative. If I don't ask, I can't be denied. But unasked needs remain unmet. True humility is transparent, not timid. It says, I have needs, and they matter as much as yours. This equality terrifies the fawn, whose survival script equates modesty with safety. In NSL, equality sounds like even tone, unhurried pace, and upright posture. The voice no longer curls around others' comfort. It stands beside it. Consider the mirror interplay between the invisible healer and the spotlight seeker. One fears being unseen, the other being too seen. Yet both orbit the same wound, conditional acceptance. The path of healing converges, reclaiming agency over visibility. You may speak softly, but you must still speak. Another subtle dynamic, invisibility as protest. When overwhelmed, the fawn may retreat, silence as a statement, absence as authority. This is the dorsal aspect of the pattern, the withdrawal that whispers. You'll miss me when I'm gone. Though passive, it's performative, a final attempt at influence. Integration invites directness. Instead of disappearing, declare, I need space. Transparency transforms vanishing into a boundary. Language, again, is the lever. Words like just and sorry shrink sentences and selves. Replace I'm just wondering with I'd like to ask. Replace sorry to bother you with do you have a moment? The meaning remains. The posture changes. Each revision retrains prosody, apology to assertion, contraction to expansion. Embodiment practice. Stand tall, feet grounded. Inhale into the belly. Exhale with a gentle hum. This vibration reawakens the vagus nerve, linking voice to safety. Then speak one need aloud, unembellished, unsoftened. Notice the instinct to amend or excuse it. Resist. Let the sentence stand like a tree. Integration is incremental. The invisible healer cannot leap from silence to spotlight. Their nervous system requires trust building. Begin with micro-visibility, voicing preferences, choosing restaurants, sharing opinions. These small declarations reintroduce the self to conversation. Each act says, I'm here. Relationally, partners of invisible healers often feel cared for yet distant, loved but not let in. They may sense suppression, but mistake it for serenity. Emotion, once a compass, becomes currency, spent quickly, seldom replenished. Nervous system consequences physiologically. The attention economy sustains low-grade activation. The body anticipates evaluation, heart rate elevated, breath shallow, posture poised. Even joy is performative, grins for the grid, laughter exaggerated. Cortisol lingers post-post, awaiting response. Dopamine spikes upon notification, then drops, breeding compulsion. This cycle mimics trauma response, vigilance, relief, vigilance again. Over time, regulation erodes. We lose capacity for silent satisfaction, joy unshared, grief unbroadcast, love uncaptioned. The unposted moment feels incomplete. NSL reframing begins with reclaiming unrecorded experience. Let a sunset be seen only by your eyes. Feel emotion without converting it to a caption. Rebuild the link between stimulus and sensation, unmediated by display. The linguistic body in MLH. The linguistic body is the lived syntax of the self. When language externalizes too soon, the body's voice atrophies. Expression precedes integration. Truth becomes transcript. Reversal requires slowness. Before articulating, attend. Feel breath rise, pulse steady, throat open. Let the body phrase first, a sigh, a hum, a hand on heart, and speak. The difference is not semantic, but somatic. Words carry weight when incubated in sensation. To reclaim authenticity in spectacle, cultivate an inner audience, a presence that witnesses without demand. This is self-attunement, the nervous system's backstage. Social media as modern stage. In this arena, roles proliferate. The curator selects, filters, frames. The confessor overshares for intimacy. The commentator converts opinion into identity. The catalyst courts controversy for engagement. Each archetype reflects a nervous system strategy to control, connect, or compel. None is inherently false. Each becomes dysregulated when exclusive. Balance emerges through rotation, knowing when to step off stage. The practice of pause 1. Pre-post check-in. Before sharing, ask, am I expressing or performing? Feel for contraction. If tension, pause. 2. Silent share. Experience something meaningful and tell no one. Let satisfaction settle internally. 3. Lexicon audit. Note how often you use superlatives. Amazing, devastating. Replace with nuance. 4. Offline reflection. Journal by hand. Slowness reintroduces sincerity. Each act reclaims sovereignty over spectacle. Reclaiming the private self-privacy is not secrecy. It is sanctuary. The private self, unfiltered, unseen, anchors authenticity. Without it, identity dilutes in performance. Create moments unscripted, unscored. Walk without documenting. Cry without contextualizing. Laugh without looping. These acts restore intimacy between self and sensation. The MLH reminds us, language builds worlds. When every sentence anticipates witness, the world narrows to a stage. Rewild your words in silence. Let thought exist without translation. Reflection. Who am I when no one's watching? At first, silence answers. Then slowly, sensations emerge, breath deepens, shoulders drop, eyes soften. Without witness, performance dissolves, revealing presence. That presence is not applause, it is peace. In the next movement, we'll gather these insights into integration, a reclamation of identity from the theatre of validation, and a return to selfhood rooted not in spectacle, but stillness. Mirror linguistic decode, drama, echo, and erasure language is more than a tool for communication. It is a nervous system transcript. Every word, every pause, every modulation carries data about our state. The body speaks before we do. Tone is its syntax. To decode a sentence is to read the body's biography in real time. Throughout this episode, we've explored the archetypes of spectacle, the spotlight seeker, the mirror maker, the invisible healer. Each embodies a unique dialect, amplified, adaptive, or apologetic. Now, in this mirror linguistic decode, we trace their grammar back to the body, revealing how phrases become philosophies, how tone becomes truth, and how words betray wounds before cognition catches up. Our language often tells on us. Beneath fluency lies function, protection, projection, preservation. Through NSL, we learn to hear the physiology behind the phrase. Through MLH, we uncover the mirror within meaning, the self reflected in syntax. Consider the sentence. You never listen. At face value, it's an accusation. Underneath, it's abandonment encoded in absolutes. The nervous system, flooded by disconnection, seeks certainty. Never is not literal. It's a linguistic flare fired from the limbic system. The speaker isn't measuring behavior. They're voicing a body's memory of being unheard. Now reframe. I feel unheard. Notice the shift from blame to being. From cognitive distortion to emotional precision. This is the NSL reframe, translating spectacle into specificity. It rewires both speaker and listener. Moving 1. One fact, anchor in observation. You looked away when I started speaking. 2. One feeling, translate sensation. I felt anxious and small. 3. One need, voice agency. I'd like you to stay with me while I finish. This structure mirrors secure attachment, clarity, vulnerability, and request. The nervous system relaxes in the presence of coherent language. Over time, repetition builds reflex. The body learns that specificity equals safety. The mirror in the mouth. Every sentence is a mirror, every word a reflection of the state. When we shout, we seek resonance. When we whisper, we test trust. When we are silent, we self-soothe through control. To become fluent in mirror linguistics is to become literate in the self, to read tension as punctuation, tone as subtext, prosody as punctuation. In truth, there is no such thing as neutral language. Every utterance is embodied. Every fine carries fawn, every whatever a trace of flight. Our vocabulary is a topography of nervous system imprints. Relearning honesty is not moral but mechanical, breath, tone, truth aligned. So, as you move forward, listen for your linguistic tells. Do you exaggerate to be believed? Minimize to be tolerated? Generalize to avoid precision? Each is a survival dialect awaiting translation. Honesty, when regulated, is quieter than drama but lands deeper. It doesn't audition, it arrives. The goal is not eloquence, but embodiment. Sentences spoken at the same pace as the heartbeat, tone tuned to truth. When language and nervous system align, communication becomes communion, no longer performance, but presence, integration. The authentic stage. The theatre is not the problem, the script is. We were never meant to abandon expression, only distortion. Integration is not silence, it's sincerity. The goal is not to quit the stage, but to inhabit it truthfully. No costumes, no choreography, just coherence. This is the authentic stage, the space where visibility and vulnerability coexist, where being seen no longer means being shaped. To stand here requires authentic visibility, the willingness to be witnessed for truth, not theatrics. It's not modesty, nor confession, it's congruence. The nervous system feels steady, the voice grounded, the gaze direct. Authentic visibility begins with inner attunement. Before the audience, there must be an inner witness, a compassionate observer within who validates experience before it's shared. Without this, every gaze feels like judgment. With it, even scrutiny becomes survivable. This inner audience is built through repetition, naming truth aloud, hearing it without recoil, offering oneself the same empathy once outsourced. Practice. Stand before a mirror, look into your own eyes, speak a truth you've long filtered. I see you even when no one claps. Pause. Breathe. Notice the tremor, the nervous system adjusting to unconditional visibility. Integration is not achieved through analysis alone, it's embodied through rehearsal. Each repetition of authenticity strengthens vagal tone, linking voice to safety, self-expression to self-regard. We integrate by reclaiming the stage, transforming performance into presence. This means speaking slower than impulse, choosing clarity over charm, valuing coherence over charisma, letting pauses replace perfection. Authenticity doesn't seek approval, it seeks alignment. The measure is not applause but ease. In NSL, ease signals regulation. The body that once braced for backlash now breathes through truth. The throat that once tightened loosens. The diaphragm expands. Authenticity feels like oxygen. But integration also involves forgiveness for the times we performed to survive, mirrored to belong, vanished to stay safe. Those weren't moral failings, they were intelligent adaptations. The stage kept us alive. Now as we step onto it again, we do so differently, not to audition, but to articulate. The self once scattered across spotlights, mirrors and silences gathers here, whole and unhurried. Authentic visibility practice. 1. Choose one conversation today to speak truth without embroidery. 2. Before speaking, inhale deeply. On the exhale, imagine releasing expectation. 3. Deliver your words as offerings, not performances. 4. Afterwards, reflect. Did your body soften or stiffen? Over time, this becomes muscle memory as a reflex. The inner audience becomes your anchor. When external validation falters, you remain witnessed. When applause fades, attunement endures. This is the reclamation of self from spectacle, the nervous system's return to sovereignty. To be witnessed is to be mirrored accurately. To be watched is to be measured. Choose witnessing. Ask yourself, what does it mean to be witnessed, not watched? Watched selves contort, witnessed selves converge. In this integration, you reclaim authorship, not of image, but of essence. You become both narrator and narrative, no longer edited by expectation.